Your sister needs this place more than you do, Zoe. When my father said those words, hand delivering my house keys to my golden child sister, Victoria, they both expected me to break down and cry. Victoria was already dragging her heavy moving boxes straight into my master bedroom, smiling like she'd just won the lottery. They thought they had trapped me. They thought because our father had always controlled the family's old assets, I was just a helpless bystander who would surrender quietly. But as I watched them happily dividing up my space, a cold smile spread across my face. I calmly pulled out my phone, dialed the emergency line, and spoke clearly. Yes, this is the owner of the luxury high-rise towers. I have trespassers in penthouse 2500. The look of absolute horror on my father's face was unforgettable. My sister forgot one major thing. My name is Zoe. I'm 33 years old, and if there is one thing I've learned in my 3 decades on this earth, it's that blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does. For as long as I can remember, I was the designated black sheep of the Whitaker household. While my younger sister, Victoria, was showered with praise for simply breathing, I was left to navigate the world completely on my own. Victoria was the golden child, a master manipulator wrapped in a designer wardrobe who never held a real job a day in her life. Our father catered to her every whim, constantly bailing her out of endless financial disasters while minimizing every single one of my achievements. But I didn't let their toxic dynamics break me. Instead, I used their neglect as fuel. While Victoria was out spending our father's money, I was working 80-hour weeks, quietly building my own real estate investment empire, completely independent of my family. I never asked my father for a single dime, nor did I ever expect an inheritance. By the time I turned 33, I had achieved a level of financial freedom they couldn't even dream of. I bought myself a stunning, state-of-the-art luxury penthouse in the most exclusive high-rise towers in the city. It was my sanctuary, a physical monument to my hard work and independence. I thought I had finally escaped their entitlement. I thought my success would keep them at bay, but I severely underestimated just how far my family's greed could actually reach. The afternoon sun was just beginning to tilt through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my living room when the sharp chimes of my doorbell shattered the silence. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, my stomach dropped. There stood my father, his posture rigid and commanding, alongside Victoria, who smirked from behind a pair of oversized sunglasses. Behind them, 2 delivery men were stacked with heavy cardboard moving boxes, completely blocking the hallway. It was an unannounced ambush. Before I could even ask what was happening, my father brushed past me, stepping firmly onto my polished hardwood floors as if he owned the place. Victoria needs this place more than you do, Zoe, he declared without a single hint of hesitation. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a duplicate set of my penthouse keys I had trusted him with for emergencies only, and slapped them directly into Victoria's waiting palm. My sister didn't waste a second. She gestured to the delivery men and immediately started directing them to move the heavy boxes straight into my master bedroom. I stood frozen, watching the chaotic scene unfold. My father turned to me, his voice dripping with casual arrogance. He explained that since I was single, childless, and already financially stable, I didn't actually need a sprawling luxury penthouse. Victoria, on the other hand, had just ruined another business venture and needed a prestigious, rent-free environment to secure a fresh start. They genuinely believed I would just bow down to his paternal authority. I stood perfectly still, watching the absolute audacity unfolding right in front of me. I chose to play along, letting a look of shock and quiet defeat wash over my face to ensure their sense of entitlement reached its absolute peak. My father watched me, mistaking my silence for submission, and let out a patronizing chuckle. He began to boast about how he had always allowed me to get ahead in life, but made it fiercely clear that family loyalty would always come first in his world. To him, my hard work was just an afterthought compared to his golden child's constant comfort. Meanwhile, Victoria was already making herself right at home. She walked around my living room, tossing her designer coat onto my custom sofa, and openly ridiculed my personal taste. As she marched into my master bedroom, she loudly directed the movers on where to stack her clothes, making endless, condescending comments about my single lifestyle and how this space was far too grand for someone like me anyway. She talked about redecorating the entire layout, treating my hard-earned sanctuary like a free parting gift from our father. Every word out of her mouth was dripping with supreme arrogance, deliberately designed to push me down and make me feel like an outsider in my own home. They truly believed they had successfully trapped me under the weight of family obligation, entirely blind to the massive storm they were walking right into. I looked down at the keys my father had so carelessly handed over to my sister, and instead of exploding in anger, I let out a soft, calm laugh. The sudden sound made Victoria pause mid-sentence, her arms full of clothes as she stared at me from the bedroom doorway. My father frowned, his brows furrowing in deep annoyance at my lack of tears. Without saying a single word to either of them, I pulled my smartphone from my pocket and dialed building management on loudspeaker phone. The line rang exactly twice before the head of building operations answered with absolute professionalism. "Yes, this is the owner of Towers," I said, my voice echoing clearly through the high-rise living room. "I am currently standing in penthouse 2500, and I have trespassers actively moving unauthorized property into my space. I need elite security dispatched to this unit immediately to remove them." The second those words left my lips, the entire atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The smug, victorious smirk vanished from Victoria's face, and her hands began to tremble slightly. My father froze completely in his tracks, his mouth slightly open as he stared at me in total, speech-breaking shock. He looked at me as if I had suddenly turned into a complete stranger. They had come here expecting a weak, emotional breakdown from a desperate daughter, but they were finally realizing that they had just walked into a trap of their own making. The door to the penthouse didn't just open, it flew wide as the building manager, followed by 3 of the tower's elite security guards, marched into the room with absolute authority. My father immediately stepped forward, his chest puffed out as he prepared to use his corporate tone to dismiss them. But before he could even utter a syllable, the building manager completely bypassed him. He walked straight over to me, bowing his head with deep respect. "We are incredibly sorry for the disturbance, Ms. Whitaker," he said loudly enough for the entire room to hear. The front desk didn't realize these people had bypassed the main lobby filters. "How would you like us to handle this corporate violation?" I looked at my father, whose face was rapidly turning an asymmetric shade of pale. "Zoe, what is the meaning of this theater?" he stammered, his paternal authority cracking right down the middle. "I gave your sister this apartment, and I can assure these gentlemen that I have the financial backing to settle any dispute." I let out a cold, sharp laugh that cut through his empty bravado. "You didn't give anyone anything, Dad," I replied smoothly, crossing my arms. "Because you don't own a single brick in this high-rise. You assumed I was leasing this penthouse or using your old family connections, but you forgot to check the public records. 6 months ago, my private holding company purchased this entire luxury tower. You didn't walk into my apartment today. You walked into a multi-million-dollar commercial asset that belongs entirely to my corporate portfolio. Your name isn't on the deed, your money isn't in the foundation, and your parental status means absolutely zero to the law here." The building manager didn't hesitate for a single second. At a simple nod from me, the elite security team stepped forward and began systematically picking up Victoria's half-unpacked moving boxes, taping them shut right in front of her face. Victoria let out a high-pitched, piercing scream of pure frustration, violently stomping her feet on my hardwood floor. "You can't do this to me, Zoe. We are family," she shrieked, her perfect golden child facade completely melting into an ugly display of rage. Security politely but firmly grabbed her by the arms, guiding her directly toward the exit. My father stood there trembling, his face a mask of absolute public humiliation, as he realized his supreme authority had evaporated into thin air. They were marched out of the penthouse and escorted all the way down into the main lobby. Because it was the middle of the afternoon, the elegant marble lobby was filled with high-profile tenants, local business executives, and affluent investors. Victoria was crying hysterically, throwing a massive tantrum while the guards rolled her cardboard boxes right past the front desk out onto the busy street curb. My father followed closely behind her, keeping his head down, completely unable to look anyone in the eye as the whispers began to ripple through the crowd. I stood at the top of the grand lobby staircase looking down at them with total detachment. Before the glass doors slid shut behind them, I delivered my final, icy warning. Don't you ever step foot on my properties or try to exploit my life again. You are officially cut off. They had arrived like conquerors, but they left as completely humiliated trespassers. 3 months have passed since that afternoon, and my life has never been more peaceful. I recently found out through some mutual acquaintances that my father's old family business is struggling heavily under the weight of his poor financial decisions. And without my success to brag about or exploit, his credit lines are drying up. Victoria was forced to move into a tiny, cramped studio apartment on the edge of the city, finally realizing that her days of living rent-free off the hard work of others are officially over. She actually had to get a normal retail job to pay for her own designer clothes. Neither of them has dared to send me a single text message or phone call since that day in the lobby, knowing that my legal team is ready to drop a massive restraining order on them the second they cross the line. Living high above the city in my quiet, undisturbed penthouse, I finally feel the true weight of my independence. Building an empire completely on your own isn't easy, but moments like this make every single hour of overtime entirely worth it. Now, I am incredibly curious about all of you who have stayed to listen to my story until the very end. What would you do if your own parents tried to forcefully give your hard-earned property away to a spoiled sibling? Would you have called security on them, or would you have handled it differently? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of real-world justice, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. I am leaving 2 other shocking family stories right here on the final screen that will completely surprise you. Thank you so much for watching.